Welcome to Route to Resilience, the podcast where we explore the power of resilience through life's challenges. I'm your host, Anupa, and today we'll delve into inspiring stories that nourish the mind, body, and soul. Join us as we hear from extraordinary individuals who share their journeys of courage, healing, and the strength we find within ourselves when facing adversity. Today's very special guest is Claire Snowdon-Darling. Claire is a pioneer in women's hormonal health, the creator of the Triangle of Hormonal Health clinic model, and the author of How to Improve the Menopause Experience Through Nutrition and Lifestyle. She's also the head of the College of Functional Wellness, where she trains practitioners internationally to support women through hormonal imbalances and menopause and holistic nutrition-based approaches. Claire is passionate about transforming how hormonal health is treated, challenging outdated models, and helping women feel truly heard. Her clinical work focuses on menopause, adrenal issues, chronic fatigue, and how diet and lifestyle can make a profound difference in how we feel. Today, she joins us to talk about how nutrition and hormonal health are deeply connected to our ability to build resilience, especially in the face of burnout, fatigue, and life's transitions. So Claire, I'm so grateful for having you on the podcast today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for inviting me.
I think that this conversation is going to be of extreme value to our listeners, and I think that you have so much knowledge in this area, so I'm really excited about having this conversation with you. So, shall we dive into the questions?
Let's.
So, Claire, you have a really powerful personal story. How did your experience with early menopause and trauma shape your understanding of resilience?
Yeah, it's such a good question. In 2004, I gave birth to my daughter, and it was a horrifically traumatizing birth experience, and we both nearly died. And I came through in recovery, and I couldn't hold her. I could barely keep my eyes open. It was just horrific from start to finish. And I had this intense, overwhelming tiredness. And to begin with, I just put it down to 3 days of birth trauma. But after 2 weeks of barely being able to hold my child, and just, I knew something wasn't right with me. I was just like exhausted, doesn't even come close to explaining how I felt. And very, very quickly, I sort of descended into postpartum psychosis. I was eventually diagnosed about 8 months later with postnatal depression. And I was then just trying to stumble through figuring out what was wrong with me, but the doctors weren't really much help. One of my doctors did identify that I had postnatal depression and sort of recommended some counseling, but no one was really doing any blood tests. No one was really checking anything. And actually what I know now is even if I'd have had the blood tests, they would have come back as normal because the medical profession really aren't looking they're not looking in the right place when it comes to things like chronic fatigue syndrome and mental health issues. And it took me many, many years to feel well. In fact, I actually got a diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder when my daughter was 8, and we really only bonded by the time she was 10. So it's been a huge journey for us both. But during this time, I started to get into just trying to exercise a bit more, eat better, just trying to figure out what was going to nourish my body because I just knew that something was really, really wrong. And that's how I got into doing what I do, because previously I actually worked in theatre with people with learning disabilities, and I ran a theatre company, and I just didn't have the energy. And I discovered the therapy that I do, I have done for 20 years in my quest to get well. And so when you ask, how has trauma shaped my resilience? I think the truth is I'm just going to really get to the nub in here of what I really believe when it comes to trauma and resilience. I think the thing is that life taps us on the shoulder and it gives us an opportunity to make change. And there's this great guy, Joseph Campbell, who wrote the story A Hero with a Thousand Faces, and he's all about the hero's journey. And actually, the truth is, we're the hero of our own journey, the hero of our own story. And he created like a theory. And in it's like every single story in the world has this theory. And he says that we have this call to adventure, or life is whispering us that we need to make a change. And we ignore it. We just, paper over it. We just pretend we'll be happy if we go and buy the thing, or binge watch this TV show, or go out drinking with our girlfriends, or something, or if I have a baby, or when I get married, I'll be happy. And sometimes if we keep ignoring what the life is trying to tell us, it's like it will give us a sign that is so huge, and commonly that comes in the form of a major trauma or a chronic health event. And in my case, it was both. Like, I needed both to absolutely floor me, so that I had no choice actually but to listen and to decide to change career, to do this training. And it was very indulgent. It was about me and putting my needs first. And through that, really having to say to my husband, you had a small child, and I'm going to go away and do this training, and I'm going to spend this money. And I came from a very tight-knit family, and my dad was a rocket scientist. So suddenly training in something holistic was like, I mean, I may as well have been saying I was doing witchcraft back in the 1500s. But it was always about this. I need to do this for me. And I have experienced something that was so profound that there's nothing scathing that you can say that's going to deter me. And so from a perspective of resilience, I honestly think that resilience is when we get to a point of such radical self-care that we actually stop caring what other people think, and that we are just going to find whatever is right in our flow day after day to put one step in front of the other. I think that's true resilience.
Wow, what an incredible journey. I actually didn't realize just how much of a transition this was. I didn't know about the
Yeah.
career change or any of that. I think that your journey is incredible. And the thing is that not only did you help yourself, but now you're helping so many others. So I think this is such a powerful story. But tell us about, you created something called the Triangle of Hormonal Health. What
Mm.
is that all about, and how does it support women through physical and emotional stress?
Uh, Great question. So if I just go back to the story for a moment, because I'll transition into this. So I trained in the therapy that I was in clinical practice with in 2007. And I opened my clinic, and I then went on and trained in something like 16 different modalities. And I was so desperate to find the answer for myself. And so it cracked open physical journey, an emotional journey, a nutritional journey, and a spiritual journey. Like, I was leaving no stone unturned in this coming back to myself. And I was doing everything I was told. I was also still doing everything I was told or suggested by the medical practitioners. I was still trying to engage with mainstream medication because there was something really wrong with me. But I did everything. I was taking the supplements, I was doing the crazy diets, I was literally everything, and I just wasn't getting better. And my business partner, Laura Knowles, who has also been my best friend since 2000, who's gone through her own health journey, she was in the same camp. We were both doing everything we were told to get better, and we weren't getting better. We also had an issue that we were training with some of the best academies at the time, and we realized that there was so much missing and so much lack, and that the complementary therapy world was almost like, well, we don't have to justify anything that we do. And I realized that there's so much lack in the mainstream medical that actually there's a real opportunity for alternative medicine, complementary or functional, whatever you want to call it, to actually step up and to learn some lessons from the mainstream medical. Basically, I sort of feel like where we're the most powerful is where we acknowledge that we're different to the mainstream, but where we hold ourselves accountable, like the mainstream model do. And no one
Mm.
else was really doing this. So I was in clinical practice. I was working with literally, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of clients. And it all seemed to be going well, but I wasn't getting better. And then I had an annus horribilis in 2015 that it was just one of those years where, you know, so much just hits you around the face, and you haven't got time to process it. And I went off to Australia, and it was actually Laura and I had struggled with a wellness center that we'd opened that had failed. I mean, I say failed, we learned a lot from it, so I don't really believe in failure. And I was just broken. I just had nothing left. It was also at a point where my illness had just hit a point of like a critical mass where I was just really, really unwell. And at that point, I had pursued everyone I could find in the alternative world and had spent so much money. I just dared, I dread to think. I'd also pursued everything I could in the medical world. And it was just before I got my diagnosis of premature ovarian insufficiency, which is basically a little bit like an early menopause. So I had had chronic fatigue, and that had been a precursor to turning into premature ovarian insufficiency, where your body just gives up making its hormones. And so I was sort of plunged into this world of hormones. Now, I hadn't really trained in hormones, so I was like, I don't really know what this is. And it was, I like to bring everything down to basics. Like, I always think I have a very primary school brain. And so sometimes I think that things that are delivered in a really complicated way, it's like it's too easy to miss things. So I like to break things down to really simple terms. And I remember looking at all this stuff that I was suddenly like diving into with research and going, wait a tick, there's all these connections that no one's talking about. And I happened to be in Australia taking a sabbatical with a friend of mine who, at the time, she was in her mid-40s, and she had just become a single mum. She was broken up with her partner. She was living in the most expensive city in the world, one of the most expensive cities in the world. She was a freelancer. Like, her stress was through the roof. Her hormones were clearly destabilized, and she was eating a load of junk food. And I was trying to explain to her, if she's eating junk food, it's making her periods worse. And I literally drew in my journal a triangle and just tried to show her that there is this connection between your what you eat and stress and your sex hormones, but it also has a knock-on effect with your emotions, and how each of these sets of hormones are also responsible for our emotions. And so she's going to be in emotional freefall, she's going to be in hormonal freefall until she can actually find a way to stop eating junk food. And I suddenly looked at this triangle and realized that we had created a way of training practitioners how really why diet is so key, and why removing food intolerances is so key, and why our hormonal imbalances that seems to be an epidemic right now, actually it's not about the hormones at all. It's actually about our diet, and it's about our stress, and it's about our gut, and it's about how our immune system is functioning. And so the reason why I think the triangle is so helpful is because it really helps women to make informed choices about the food they put in their mouth. One of my favorite kind of analogies is, having worked with a lot of people who are going through, you know, an end of life diagnosis, terminal diagnosis, is they say it's amazing what you can decide not to give a damn about. And I always say, particularly to women have this obsession with, it has to be me that does this, I must do this thing. And so the amount of stress we put ourselves under,
Yeah.
it's amazing what you can give up if you have to. And so this triangle, I truly believe, really supports women to realize, okay, if I'm going to eat the junk and I'm going to put myself under high stress, and maybe I'm going to be on the contraceptive pill or a synthetic hormone, I'm heading for trouble. And so which of these things do I feel I can change? And if I don't feel I can change, then maybe I can reach out for some coaching.
Yeah, I mean, I really, part of the reason, let me just tell the listeners how I know you. Part of the reason why I know you is because I was so interested in the work that you do. I actually ended up doing a course at the College of Functional Wellness, and some of the things that I learned was actually quite profound, because there's going to be so many people resonating with the conversation you're having now and what you're telling us, because we go to the doctors and we feel a little bit stuck because they will do whatever they can for us. But actually, there's a lot of education that we're missing out on on what we're putting in our bodies, what our lifestyle's like, and actually we have the choice to be able to change and to be able to be as healthy as we possibly can be. And the other thing is we're all individual, so actually what we decide to do for ourselves might be different for somebody else. So I think that the work that you do is so needed right now, and I think that there is a gap. There is a gap with the health and what we're taught, and I think we should definitely talk more about this. So let's sort of dive into hormonal imbalances and how that, in your opinion and in the knowledge that you have, directly impacts physical, mental, and emotional resilience. So give us an example of how this is directly impacting physical, mental, and emotional resilience.
Well, what I know of hormone imbalances is that they just become life affecting, that there is a point where we can't get out of bed. And the more you develop like, I've got an intimate relationship with each of my female hormones, the estrogen, the progesterone, the testosterone. It has taken years and years and years to get my levels right and my balance right. And I have had too much or too little of all of those at any one time. And so I know the effects that they have. And so if I break that down, if we don't have enough progesterone is our calming hormone. Progesterone opposes cortisol, our stress hormone. If we don't have enough progesterone, we will absolutely have anxiety. Absolutely have anxiety. And so when you hear about how much anxiety is in the world, I genuinely see too little progesterone as an epidemic right now. It is hitting young women. Well, the youngest person I've got in my clinic is 14 years old, and she shows in a functional test as having postmenopausal levels of progesterone. It is shocking. And the only reason we're not making enough progesterone is because of the sheer quantity of stress that the female body is under in 2025. So this is a big problem. This is a huge problem. So if we don't have enough progesterone, anxiety. If we don't have enough estrogen or too much estrogen, or we're recirculating our estrogen because our gut's not working, that's depression. Like, we are just so low. It genuinely feels like all the color goes out the world. And it doesn't matter if someone was there with, like, a huge surprise party and a balloon. You're just literally like, there is no color in the world. It's just the most gray. And when you see that antidepressants are one of the most commonly prescribed medications for women, we have to start addressing hormonal imbalance. And if we don't have enough testosterone, then we genuinely just don't care. Like, again, if someone said you've won the lottery and you just got to get to the post office, you'd go, oh, I can't be asked. Like, I just can't be asked. So when we start looking at, and if we've got too much testosterone, we end up absolutely wired. Like, I just can't stop. I can't relax. I'm just absolutely wired. So we end up in this place where we think we have all this emotional stuff going on. Maybe it's actually our hormones. When we start to see how much modern life is de-stressing, like distressing female hormones, we have to start talking about this hormonal imbalance.
So, I mean, it's not just hormones, though, right? A lot of what you talk about is also how nutrition is playing a part in this. What is the role that nutrition plays in things like chronic fatigue and hormonal imbalances?
So that's a great question. So I'm just going to go back a little bit, because the biggest problem that we see right now is lack of progesterone. And the reason for that, like I said, is because of the stress that modern day life is putting on our bodies. And so the body has to make, I'm just going to explain this, and I'm going to go into the nutrition piece because it will make more sense. Progesterone stands for progestation hormone. It's the hormone that nourishes your womb lining and gets it ready for a baby. From an evolutionary perspective, if you're under stress, the body will have to make a decision. Is it safe to create an environment that's safe for a baby, or do I have to get out of danger? And if I have to get out of danger, the hormone I have to produce is the stress hormone cortisol. So in response to a stressor, the body will make the stress hormone cortisol and prioritize that over making progesterone. So this is genuinely the reason we're seeing low progesterone, because then we have to start asking the question, what is a stressor? And a stressor is either biochemical, so it's the food that we're eating, or depleted food, depleted nutrition, so not having enough nutrition for a start. It could be things like radiation, pesticides, pollution, dehydration, all of these biochemical things, some of which we can't control, but a lot of them we can. There'll also be emotional stressors, electrical stressors like gadgets and gizmos, and structural stressors like being sedentary or wearing clothes that are too tight. So all these things will be a reason why the body will start to produce cortisol over progesterone. But the fundamental, like I said, we can't change a lot of them. We can't change the fact that there's street lights and pollution and radiation in the atmosphere, and the fact that we all have to, get onto devices for work. But what we can change is the food that we put into our mouth. And
Mhm.
so, at the top of my list for why we don't make enough progesterone is poor diet and food intolerances. And one of my favorite sayings is, if someone has a symptom, they still aren't eating right. There is still a food that they are intolerant to, or they're eating not enough protein, too many carbohydrates, too much refined food. It's literally that simple. And we've made it so complicated, so complicated. Like, if you've got irritable bowel syndrome, then maybe you need a fecal transplant. I mean, maybe just change diet. Maybe, you go to the vets with a dog and they say, what's it eating? Is it drinking water? And is it, are you taking it for a walk? Like, they want to know those basics. Doctors don't ask those questions anymore because that's not what they're trained to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm absolutely mind blown because you mentioned a couple of times how much stress we're under nowadays and how much things have changed for ourselves and our bodies. And you just listed so many things that are impacting us, and you've talked about it being an epidemic. I had no idea that there's so many things that have changed in our lives that are making us so stressed and, causing all these health issues. And I think it's no wonder that our health system is somewhat dismissing the issues that we have because it's kind of not changed over the years.
It's too
Um,
big. And it's too big. It's too big an issue. When you start to look at really who runs the world, you're talking about big pharma, big food, and agriculture, and big food, and big tech, and it's those three things that are genuinely causing the problem. So no one's going to look into this. No one's going to. We have to figure it out for ourselves.
so, what do you think? So, for someone who's listening now, I don't want people to feel panic or anxiety. There is a way out of this. What would
Yeah.
your biggest advice be for that person who's now listening, thinking, "Oh, I'm doomed." What can they do to make sure that they are seen and heard when it comes to these kind of health issues that we're experiencing so much more than we used to?
So, but seen and heard by their doctor, you mean?
By doctors or any other health professional?
Um, I'm. I did I interviewed a doctor recently, and it was really, and she was a functional doctor, so very much sort of an elevated version of what I do. So we speak a similar language, but we were talking about this kind of issue. How do you get seen and heard? And she made a really good point, which is, why are you trying to be heard by people who speak a different language? And so, stop trying to, you're barking up a wrong tree if you're still trying to knock on the door of the medical profession. So if you
Mm.
feel that you are not being heard or seen, go elsewhere, find a functional coach, find a functional doctor, just just go and speak to someone who really hears and understands what you're saying. And I think that's the thing, when people come into a clinical consultation with me, is so commonly, I just have women in tears in their short little half-hour session because they go, oh my God, I actually feel like someone's really listened to me. And I'm like, it's because everything you've just told me, everything that was wrong with you. I'm just not trying to put it through a different translator to give you an answer or give you a solution that doesn't match the problem. So yes, of course. But in terms of what can we do about this situation, I think the real key is, how do I educate myself? I know you mentioned earlier about chronic fatigue syndrome, and I didn't touch on it, but when we have these big issues, when we have any kind of chronic health issue, the more we can do our research. It doesn't take much research to find that chronic fatigue syndrome is connected to the gut. It doesn't, that there is intestinal permeability. And as soon as you're in the gut, you're now talking about diet, you're talking about nutrition, you're starting to talk about, okay, what changes can I make? So, I mean, the first thing that I would always say on a practical level, the the best bit of advice I can give anyone for their health always is don't eat wheat and eat more protein. Like it's actually really easy. Don't eat wheat and eat more protein. And the problem is we're seeing so many people being protein deficient. There's so much fear around, weight gain or eating meat or what protein to have, that people just kind of self-select out. It's also more expensive, so people are now going for cheaper options. I understand, but there are ways to do it more cheaply. And giving up wheat is a number one absolute destroyer of our gut microbiome, of our hormones, and of our immune system.
And how does that not eating wheat? I know that it has a effect on fatigue and how we feel in our day to day, and that's also having a direct link to our mental health and how resilient we feel,
Mm-hmm.
isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a part of us that is not feeling strong, mentally strong enough to do things in our day to day because of what we're eating.
Mm.
And just give me a little reason why wheat is not good for you. So I've learned this in the course, but I found this so interesting that I want other people to know why,
Mm.
wheat is not great for us.
So I'll give you my little wheat story. So in 1969, wheat grain was very tall, like the wheat plant was very, very tall, and it was very easy to topple over if there was a high wind. It wasn't very resistant to pests. And in 1969, a man called Norman Borlaug hybrid the grain and made it short. So now when you see the full harvest, you see those wheat fields that are really uniform in height, and it's very, it's easy for a combine harvester to go through. So it's very uniform. So what happened was, the first thing, when he won a Nobel Prize, because they said he saved 1 billion lives. I personally think that he has damaged 8 billion lives, but that's just my opinion. I'm sure there are people who are very grateful. But what happened was, wheat used to be expensive because it was quite hard to grow. And wheat has now become an incredibly cheap commodity. So it is in everything. And I mean everything. It's just become a cheat way of thickening food and bulking things out. So our exposure to wheat has gone up something ridiculous like 80-90%. The other problem is, when they hybrid that grain, the gluten content used to be quite low, like it is in rye or spelt. It's around about 8%. It's now something like 80% gluten. And gluten in Latin means glue. It glues itself to your bowel. People with joint pain, it's gluing itself to your joint pain. It is causing inflammation. But that's not the end of the story, because then in 1983, we started spraying it with a pesticide called glyphosate, which is also known as Monsanto's Roundup. It's an antimicrobial, which is great if you're trying to get rid of a blight on your wheat crop. But when you think that our gut microbiome is made up of trillions and trillions of microbes, we don't want an antimicrobial. That's our immune system. That's, everything that's keeping us healthy and keeping us well. And so what happens when we eat this wheat is it literally obliterates our gut microbiome, and we get this message that comes from our gut saying, I am in danger. It puts us into a state of fear and anxiety and a danger response. More cortisol, less progesterone, more anxiety. And over time, so our gut bacteria start to give off something called endotoxins. And over time, we actually know that people with low resilience and also mental health issues, so depression, anxiety, etc., we know they have higher levels of endotoxins in their bloodstream. So we know that there is this gut-brain connection, and wheat is a huge, huge contributor to that.
You have so much knowledge, honestly. Like Claire, I could literally, you're blowing my mind a little bit because I could listen to you all day long. And I feel like everybody needs a Claire because you're like an encyclopedia, and it's so important to understand these things. But you have worked with thousands of women, and I know that you have worked with thousands of people to help them with their health issues. What are the common patterns that you've seen? And what are the common sort of patterns you've seen in terms of how they regain their strength and how they are supported holistically? Because there's going to be common sort of themes, isn't there?
Yeah. So what I see commonly is that people try and do it themselves to save money, and then they end up maybe repeating patterns. And I just can't speak highly enough of working with a coach. It's one of the reasons we wanted to train coaches, because
Mm,
this is how we're going to really change the world. And it's one of those things that people, I think, as well, really struggle to spend the money on themselves,
mm,
but it's how we make ingrained change. And so I think really learning what, like you say, I'm an encyclopedia. That's what our coaches learn. How can we all know all of this stuff? There's a lot of stuff I go and get coaching on, because even though I know a lot of it, it's actually great for me. I want to be held accountable. I want to feel like someone is supporting me and cheerleading me and helping me along, because it can just feel, oh, I'm doing this thing again. Oh, I'm trying to give up this food again. And it can really, I think, affect our resilience. So I'm kind of a big fan of, do you know what? I'm going to budget this money. I'm going to throw myself in. I'm going to pull this person along for the ride with me. And actually, it helps me to get through. Did that answer your question?
yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's one of the things that actually the thought process I was going through when I joined the course, the functional wellness course at the college, because I was like, what, 1 minute, I should be investing in myself. And then I thought, wow, hold on 1 minute. I could help others as well with the knowledge that I learn. Yeah, coaching is such a big industry at the moment, and there's a good reason for it. So yeah, I just want everybody to know that there is, the College of Functional Wellness. If anybody's looking for any kind of support or wanting to increase their knowledge, it's a great place to learn all of these things. So I think that let's sort of go on to, for someone who's listening and really wants to make changes to their health but is feeling a little bit overwhelmed, a little bit burnt out, what is the one empowering step they can take towards rebuilding their resilience right now?
Get more sleep. Get more sleep. If you're feeling overwhelmed, I would just say don't take on anything else. Cut stuff out your diary. Like, get more sleep, get more rest. Figure out how you can learn to say no. That is the first thing. If you're overwhelmed, you're not going to get anywhere. Like, it has to change. Really has to come from a place of like, it's either going to come from a place of desperation, or it's going to come from a place of determination. And I always think it's healthier to come from a place of determination. Like, don't go through the thing that I went through to have to be the sign that you've got to make change. So I would always say the first thing to do is to start carving out time for you. So,
Mm,
because everyone's busy and everyone's overwhelmed. So if you can start to carve out bits of time for you that mean, okay, I'm just going to make sure that tonight, I call it the self-care list, like, create a list of 10 things. And in those 10 things, have stuff from like 10 minutes up to an hour. And your only commitment in the first instance is to do one of those things every single day. So if you've got a bit more time, have a bath for an hour, or go on an evening walk and enjoy the sunset or something. If you've only got 10 minutes, it might be that you go, I'm just going to lie down in a dark room and just shut my eyes just for 10 minutes and just not have any gadgets and gizmos or my kids or my dog, or just 10 minutes for me, just to reset. Because that's actually, that self-love practice then can start to expand as we're nourishing ourselves and we've carved out more time. Then it can be, oh, do you know what? Actually, in this 10 minutes, I've got a bit of headspace. So I'm just going to Google what she was saying about wheat and start to make some decisions. And then it becomes, oh, okay, well, maybe I can start to give up wheat. And then now I'm actually feeling a bit more energized. Maybe I want to start, I'm quite interested in this. So maybe I want to start training. But, if you said to someone who's in overwhelm, yeah, do a training course, but you're going to have to carve out, what, 4 or 6 hours a week, they're going to like have a meltdown. Like, this is not the time. It is when we're starting to feel a bit more resilient, but that resilience is only going to come from radical self-care. Radical. And in that first instance, doing nothing is doing something. And then it's that when you've felt a bit refreshed, even if that takes a month, 2 months, 3 months of just radical self-care of doing nothing, to then go, it's time for me to start looking at my diet. okay, I'm ready. I have a little bit more resilience. Now I'm going to do that. I call this the spectrum of health, just taking one step, not even every day, but step by tiny, tiny baby step. And then in a year, you'll have made all these changes you won't even know yourself.
Yeah, I love that advice, Claire. I think that's really important. I think that's exactly what people should be doing, taking one step at a time and not looking at the bigger picture, but thinking about what can I change today that is sustainable and that I can do, and that is not going to be too overwhelming for me, and then take it another step and then take it another step. So I think that's really great advice. Now, and we've touched upon nutrition, we've touched upon lifestyle, and we've touched upon hormones. Let's talk a little bit about menopause because I know that you've got a new book out. Did you want to tell people about your book?
About my lovely
Yeah.
book that is literally out. We're currently recording this in April 2025, and it is out in like 2 weeks' time. Yes, so Laura and I have written the book, Improving the Menopause Experience Through Nutrition and Lifestyle, and um, it is aimed at the person on the street going through menopause, but via a practitioner, because we train practitioners, so it is for practitioners to read and then pass on to clients. But the thing is, like, actually, the only reason we're talking about menopause right now is because women don't have the capacity anymore. Because, like I was saying, we haven't got the hormonal resilience to go through menopause because we've spent a life going through too much stress, and diets have impaired our ability to function at this point. And so that's why there's such a lens on menopause right now. But really, the reason I wrote the book was because it's the women going through menopause who have got the daughters or the nieces. And it's the young women that I want to help the women with menopause, but we're supposed to go through menopause. And I'm really sorry. It's like, it's awful for a lot of us. It's dreadful. But we have got to start to learn this for ourselves so that we can help the next generation. Because I look at my daughter's generation, and she's 21. We have a great relationship now, just by the way. But she's
Mm.
21 and she has got hormone imbalances. Every single one of her friends at uni has got hormone imbalances. Like, I truly believe that the generation of women going through the appalling menopause now, it's so that we can stop the generation of our children having an appalling menopause. So yeah, we wrote it because the information that we give in this is not just for menopausal women, it is actually for anyone with hormonal imbalances, because they look the same when you test them. Like, our hormones are looking the same, and that's what's really scary.
Yeah, it's I think that's a really great thing to sort of mention, that we have the option to change now, and we have the option to educate ourselves now so that future generations can also reap the benefits, because so much has changed. And I think we're doing a lot of it is we're doing catch up. We're basically now learning about what is the best foundation to build for our own health. Was there anything that you think that we should mention and we should talk about, and our listeners should definitely know about, that we haven't covered? Because I know that you've got so much you want to say.
I always have so much I want to say. I think the thing that I also want to say is, when it comes to resilience, I think like, my experience is, one of the hardest things can be is admitting you're not okay and asking for help. And so, whatever help you need to be able to admit that you're not okay, and therefore reach out and ask for help, that's a hugely important thing, hugely important. And I think when we're able to do that is when the magic happens, because the right coach will turn up, or the right book will turn up, or the right information will turn up. And it is also, if you are sort of searching by yourself, it can be trial and error. So I always put the call out, like, when I'm trying to figure something out, where I go, okay, I need the best teacher for this now. Like, let the best teacher turn up. And then it's about staying open to messages that your friends give you, or things that pop up on your feed, or, whatever it is that's like, it's the following the white rabbit, like Alice in Wonderland. Like, how do I get to this next place that I want to be? But true resilience is about never stopping, isn't it? So it's, am I truly happy with my health right now? or am I making do? And if I'm not truly happy, then there's another stone to be turned over. There's somewhere else to look. Am I really happy with my mental clarity and my mental health right now? And if I'm not, then where do I need to look? How do I keep searching? I just think, if we only get one life, don't settle. Just claim the health and the mental health and the lifestyle that you truly want.
Yeah, because I think that for women especially, I think we have this mentality where we're just like, oh, we just keep going, we just keep going. That's what we're supposed to do. But in actual fact, we can keep going and we can build that resilience and we can become stronger if we just ask for the help that we need. So I really love that. So let's end the session on how you personally define resilience for yourself today. And yeah, why don't you tell me about how you defined your personal resilience?
I think there have been times where I haven't even felt that I had that resilience. Like, I think sometimes when I've been in the absolute thick of it, then, especially in some of the dark, dark places of mental illness, then definitely not just, I didn't feel like I had the resilience. And I know that there's been times where, it just felt easier to not be here at all. Like, it's just, surely it's going to be easier to not be here. But somehow, I mean, actually, it got to the point where with my chronic fatigue, I was so tired that there was no point really living. But, just even trying to figure out how to not be here was too hard. Like, that was just too challenging and took too much energy. Like, I can laugh about it now, but it was genuinely the truth. So there was kind of times where I didn't even have that resilience. The resilience, the only thing I had was get into bed and put the duvet over my head and just hope. And that would be it, I suppose. It's knowing that this too shall pass. Like, at some point, this too shall pass. And so if it is 3 days under duvet with your head under that duvet until this passes, and then, okay, I'm all right. Self-care, self-care, self-care. So I think how I would define my personal resilience is, I think it genuinely came down to choice.
Hmm.
That's all I've got. It just came down to choice. It just came down to, I just believe there has to be a better way than what I'm feeling right now. And so if I believe that there's a better way, then I'm open to looking and I'm open to listening and I'm open to trying. And then if I'm open to trying, then we're back in the game.
Yeah, I think the thing that I get from you, Claire, is, and so many people that I speak to, is that I think it doesn't matter how bad it gets. I think we know that we have a choice
Mm.
and we know that we have the strength to be able to get through this, even though it takes so much to find it in those moments. And I think that you're such an inspiration and you're such a powerhouse. I think that you have offered so much value to our listeners, and I am so incredibly grateful for everything that you shared. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for everything that you've just told us. So much information. I think is brilliant. Would you be able to share with the listeners where they could find you? Because I'm sure there's so many people that would want to, find out more about the courses that they can do, or your book, or whatever it might be.
Yeah, absolutely. So my website is clairesnowdon-darling.com, or you can find me on Instagram and Facebook at Claire Snowdon-Darling Official, or I'm on TikTok as just Claire, or just plain old Claire Snowdon-Darling. And in my website, you'll find links to the college or links to the clinic if you're interested in clinical consultations.
Yeah, I think that you could just put in Claire Snowdon-Darling into Google and you'll come up, because like I said, you're a powerhouse and you've done so much. So you're easy to find, which is so, so
Easy to
great.
find.
Thank you so much, Claire. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Route to Resilience. We hope Claire has inspired you to take ownership of your health and reminded you of the strength that comes from truly understanding your body. Resilience isn't just about bouncing back, it's about rising, thriving, and reclaiming your power in every chapter of your life. As always, please seek professional advice before making any changes to your health routine. If you found value in today's conversation, be sure to follow and share this episode with someone who might benefit. And remember, resilience is your superpower.